The invisible trap you're breathing in. Most people will never become wealthy, not because they lack discipline, vision, or desire, but because they are breathing the wrong atmosphere. They live in rooms that program mediocrity, surrounded by conversations that reward struggle, immersed in environments that quietly condition them to believe that limitation is normal. Not one alarm goes off, no flashing red lights, just a slow, steady erosion of potential, masked as comfort. Napoleon Hill warned us. He said, "Every brain becomes magnetized with the dominating thoughts which it habitually entertains. It attracts forces, the people, the circumstances of life, which harmonize with the nature of its dominating thoughts." But where do those thoughts come from? Look around you. Your friends, your home, your screen, your phone, your rhythm. They all shape your thoughts long before you do. Your environment isn't just influencing you, it's designing you. And if you live inside a space that vibrates with fear, scarcity, gossip, doubt, noise, and self-betrayal, you will either shrink to fit it or spend your entire life trying to rise while being emotionally chained to the floor. This is the invisible trap most never see. They wonder why they can't stay consistent, why they sabotage opportunity, why every bold move feels like self-betrayal. It's not just willpower, it's the code of the room they're standing in. This is what we're about to expose, not a motivational speech, but a spiritual excavation. Because until you leave the environment that is robbing your financial future, you will keep trying to build a kingdom inside a cage. And cages don't need locks. Just enough comfort to keep you obedient. Let's start at the beginning. What if the very air around you is the reason you're still broke? Let's inhale truth and exhale every lie that's keeping you here. Now we enter the first chamber of this hidden prison, where the air itself has been weaponized against your wealth. This is not metaphor. This is conditioning, and we're about to break it. You've been breathing it in for years. This silent, invisible atmosphere. You didn't choose it. You inherited it. But every breath has been shaping your financial identity without you knowing. Most people don't fail because of laziness. They fail because they've been trained by their environment to believe that success isn't safe, possible, or sustainable. Let that settle. This is the atmosphere of lack. And here's how it works. You grow up in a home where money is a source of stress, where arguments break out over every dollar, where you're taught, not in words, but in emotion, that wealth is for other people. You hear phrases like, "Money doesn't grow on trees." Don't get your hopes up. People like us just work hard and get by. We can't afford that. And every time those words are spoken, they become code. Not just sentences, systems. They etch themselves into your nervous system, your expectations, your baseline sense of what's normal. Before you ever make a decision about your financial future, it's already been made for you by the atmosphere you were raised in. It's like trying to build a cathedral inside a swamp. No matter how beautiful the design, the foundation is sinking. The room trains the rhythm. Look around. If everyone in your life is under-earning, if no one is investing, if every conversation ends in "just be grateful," or it could be worse. You're not in an environment. You're in a cage decorated with coping mechanisms. It's not your ambition that's broken. It's your atmosphere. Atmospheres have rhythm, and rhythm becomes reality. If you spend every morning surrounded by clutter, chaos, background noise, and low-frequency conversation, you don't rise, you adapt. You start to shrink your dreams to fit the volume of the room. You downplay your ideas so no one feels threatened. You delay your power so you don't get ahead too fast and make someone uncomfortable. This is not humility. This is environmental obedience. You are unconsciously submitting to the rules of the room, even if you know you were born to build a kingdom outside of it. The illusion of loyalty. Here's where it gets even more dangerous. You confuse leaving that environment with betrayal. You think, if I grow too much, I'll outgrow them. If I change, they'll think I'm arrogant. If I become wealthy, I'll lose the people I love. So, You don't sabotage your success because you're scared of money. You sabotage it because you're scared of separation. But here's the truth. You are not betraying your past by evolving. You are betraying your future by staying. Loyalty to an environment that cannot sustain your growth is not love. It's self-burial. And what do buried seeds do? They rot, unless they are planted in the right soil. Your mind is no different. The energy of the air. Have you ever walked into a room and felt your energy drop? Not because of what was said, but because of what was present. You feel the tension, the heaviness, the fear of dreaming too big. The unspoken rule. Don't try to be more than this. That is atmospheric lack. It doesn't speak. It suffocates. You stop thinking clearly. You stop feeling bold. You stop moving like someone chosen. Because your environment has convinced you that boldness is a threat. Even when no one says a word, the room speaks. And you begin to obey. The hidden cost of staying every day you stay in a room too small for your potential. You pay a hidden tax. You doubt yourself 10% more. You settle 15% more. You shrink 20% of your voice, your posture, your belief. And eventually, you become a version of yourself that looks like peace on the outside, but is quietly dying on the inside. This is the cost of atmospheric loyalty. You weren't born to live in survival mode. But if you stay in a survival-based environment long enough, you will normalize emotional poverty, not just lack of money. Lack of vision, lack of courage, lack of oxygen for your higher self. So what do? First, you name the environment. Not with blame, but with awareness. What kind of air are you breathing? Does this room celebrate your evolution or resent it? Do these walls echo encouragement or remind you to stay small? Second, you decide what rhythm you will no longer obey. The rhythm of complaint? The rhythm of gossip? The rhythm of good enough? The rhythm of always sacrificing your vision to protect someone else's insecurity? And third, you begin building an atmosphere that matches your destiny. That doesn't mean abandoning everyone. It means becoming the architect of your internal world, so you're no longer at the mercy of the one you were raised in. Because the truth is this, you were never broken. You were just breathing the wrong air. And now you're waking up. But there's one more enemy to confront, one that speaks even louder than the room. It's the noise that drowns out your intuition, the noise that keeps you from hearing the voice of your future. And that's where we go next. Now we enter the next layer of distortion, not physical, but auditory. This is where dreams are drowned out by volume, not logic. Silence is not just quiet. It is clarity. But most people never experience it. Not because it's rare, but because it's overridden by noise, external noise, mental clutter, emotional static. This noise isn't accidental. It's engineered. Every song you hear, every voice you entertain, every notification you let interrupt your breath. It's all shaping your reality and slowly suffocating your inner signal. Napoleon Hill wrote, "The subconscious mind takes any orders given to it in a spirit of absolute faith and acts upon those orders. Although the orders often have to be presented over and over again through repetition before they are interpreted by the subconscious mind." But what if the orders you're giving it aren't even yours? What if you're not failing because you're undisciplined, but because your subconscious is obeying someone else's noise? Noise is programming. Think of your mind like a frequency tuner. Every day, it's being calibrated, not by your deepest goals, but by whatever you expose it to most frequently. The gossip-laced podcast that tells you wealth is corrupt. The friends who speak fear fluently. The news cycle that thrives on anxiety. The ambient dread in your social feed, constantly reminding you that the world is burning. Every exposure is an instruction. Every voice you allow around you becomes part of your internal narration. So you say, "I want to build wealth." But your atmosphere says, "It's unsafe, it's greedy, it's selfish." And your subconscious obeys that. It doesn't filter truth from noise. It filters repetition from rarity. Whatever you allow in, again and again and again, becomes your dominant programming. The most dangerous noise is familiar. It doesn't sound evil. It sounds normal. That coworker who always reminds you to be realistic. That cousin who laughs when you talk about investing. That friend who drags every conversation back to drama and doubt. You think, it's harmless. I know what I believe. But identity is not protected by logic. It's shaped by exposure. And the more you expose yourself to conversations that vibrate with fear, lack, jealousy, and distraction, the more you unconsciously recalibrate your identity downward. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. We adapt to survive, even if it means lowering our frequency to stay connected to the tribe. You can't hear vision in a loud room. Imagine trying to hear a whisper in the middle of a nightclub. That's what it's like trying to receive divine instruction while surrounded by noise. Your intuition, your inner knowing, speaks softly. It does not compete. It does not shout. And if your environment is too loud, you will miss the message entirely. You'll think you're confused. You'll think you need more information. You'll think you're not ready. But really, you're just too noisy to hear the yes that's already inside you. Most people aren't unmotivated. They're just distracted, constantly tuned into outer frequencies, never pausing long enough to amplify the inner one. That's why you have flashes of clarity in the shower, moments of brilliance during a walk. Because in those rare silences, the real you speaks up. And then, noise returns, and the moment disappears. You must learn to curate sound like sacred space. This is not about turning off music forever. It's about discernment. Every sound is a seed. Every voice is a vote. Every playlist, podcast, or conversation is programming your identity. So ask, does this sound raise my frequency or reinforce my fear? Does this voice challenge my greatness or protect my comfort? Does this conversation help me remember who I am or who I used to be? If the answer is unclear, the cost is already too high. Wealth isn't just attracted by what you believe. It's attracted by what you surround yourself with consistently. You must build an inner sanctuary where your own voice becomes louder than the world's doubts. The practice of inner volume. Here's where you begin. Silence in the morning. Before the phone, the feed, or the world. Sit with yourself. 5 minutes of listening. That's it. Not to your thoughts, but to what doesn't speak in words. Subtract noise. One voice. One playlist. One person. One notification. Remove what no longer belongs. Trust that the silence left behind is not emptiness. It's space for wealth to enter. Add high-frequency sound. Frequencies, mantras, speeches that remind you. Not hype. Resonance. Words that feel like mirrors of your future. Speak your new code aloud. Every day, I am safe in wealth. I am clear. I am chosen. You don't say this to believe it. You say it to override the noise. Because if you don't program your mind, someone else will. And if you're still wondering why wealth hasn't arrived yet, check the volume. The money may already be trying to reach you, but it can't be heard over the sound of your environment. Silence is not a void. It is permission. The voice of your legacy is whispering. It has been all along. Can you hear it now? Good. Because the next lie will expose even more seductive. You're not addicted to poverty. You're addicted to familiarity. Let's confront it. Now we confront the true addiction, not the struggle, but the sameness. Because what feels safe is often just what's familiar, even if it's what's killing your future. Most people think they're stuck because they lack resources. They'll say things like, I just need more time. If I had more capital, I'd scale. Once things slow down, I'll focus. But the real reason they're not rising? They're addicted to who they've always been. And every part of their current identity is tethered to familiarity. Familiarity feels like safety, but it's really a cage you wake up in the same room, talk to the same people, drive the same route, eat the same food, enter the same conversations, scroll the same digital loops, and it feels normal. It feels safe. But is it? Or have you simply confused repetition with reality? Napoleon Hill wrote, "The mind becomes magnetized with the dominating thoughts which one holds in the mind, and these cause the person to draw on the physical equivalent of those thoughts." But what if your dominating thoughts aren't yours? What if they were installed by repetition, not revelation? The truth is hard. You're not trapped by poverty. You're trapped by the rhythm of who you used to be. And rhythm is harder to break than logic, because it doesn't come from the head. It comes from emotional loyalty. The addiction to the familiar, here's what happens. You start to evolve. You feel momentum. You begin speaking differently, acting differently, choosing differently, and suddenly, discomfort. Not because you're failing, but because you're no longer operating in your old pattern. This discomfort is not a sign to stop. It's a symptom of withdrawal from familiarity. Your nervous system doesn't know how to handle this new rhythm yet, so it panics. You retreat. You procrastinate. You pick fights. You delay launches. You suddenly feel off. But what's really happening is this. You're detoxing from a version of yourself you've emotionally depended on. The version who always worried. The version who always made just enough. The version who needed to be needed and fear being seen fully. And like any addiction, letting go feels like dying. Because in a way it is. It's the death of your familiar self. Loyalty to old rooms is loyalty to the old you. You can't rise and still stay emotionally available to every version of your past. You can't expand and still require the approval of people who fear expansion. You can't claim sovereignty while clinging to conversations rooted in your former limitations. At some point, you must choose evolution or familiarity, wealth or emotional safety, legacy or nostalgia. You won't get both. Not right away. Because the path to transformation always requires a temporary loneliness. It's not punishment. It's proof. Proof that your identity is detaching from the familiar and anchoring into the future. And the world won't adjust immediately. Your circle won't applaud immediately. Your emotions won't stabilize immediately. But if you keep going, you'll outgrow the need for comfort entirely. And that's when real wealth begins. Ask yourself, what familiarity am I still obeying? Reflect honestly. Are you still speaking the language of who you used to be, so you don't offend anyone? Are you playing small in rooms you've already outgrown, because you don't want to make anyone uncomfortable? Are you keeping yourself accessible to patterns, people, and platforms that no longer match your frequency, just to stay grounded? What if that grounding is actually what's keeping you broke? You weren't meant to be grounded. You were meant to grow wings. And sometimes, wings require you to leave the nest, even if the nest was safe, warm, and filled with familiar love. Love is not loyalty to limitation. Love, real love, allows evolution, even if it hurts, even if it separates, even if it silences every voice of your former self. You will miss the familiar, but you must choose the future. Don't expect it to be easy. You will miss the old rhythm. You'll crave the simplicity of who you used to be. The one who didn't take risks. The one who kept the peace. The one who stayed small so others could stay close. But let this be clear. Peace at the cost of your destiny is not peace. It's paralysis. Familiarity will comfort you, but it will never crown you. And the moment you realize that, you stop looking back. Not with bitterness, but with reverence. Because the old you did their job. They kept you alive. They got you here. But now, you are being summoned by the future. And the path forward cannot be paved with recycled habits. It requires a sacred separation. That begins with disconnection. Temporary, necessary, sovereign. That's where we go next. We now enter the sacred pause, the fasting of the familiar, where transformation isn't added, but uncluttered. This is where you disconnect to reconnect with your true signal. Every system needs a reset. Even the most advanced machines crash when they're overloaded. Even the most powerful minds stall when they're surrounded by static. That static, it's not just noise. It's energetic interference, and the only cure is environmental fasting. Napoleon Hill didn't use those exact words, but he described it well. He called it the habit of concentrated attention, the discipline of stepping away from distraction, of withdrawing from the crowds so the mind could focus its power. What most people don't realize is this: you don't evolve by adding more. You evolve by removing what's in the way. It's about subtracting deliberately, so the signal of who you truly are can come back online. Fasting is not just about food, it's about frequency. We fast not because food is bad, but because we need to reset our sensitivity, to reconnect with hunger, clarity, control. The same applies to your environment. When you fast from your surroundings, the screens, the opinions, the energy leaks, the constant comparison, you begin to feel again. You start noticing the tension in your chest after you scroll too long. You start feeling the mental fog after a day of talking to people who drain you. You start recognizing how often you interrupt your own intuition just to check a device that hasn't delivered anything meaningful in months. Environmental fasting brings it all to the surface. And once you see the distortion, you can start restoring the signal. What to fast from and why it's hard. Begin here. Fast from unnecessary conversations. Fast from music that numbs you. Fast from screens that sedate you. Fast from rooms that tolerate you but don't challenge you. Fast from people who love your past but fear your future. Not forever, but long enough to remember how it feels to hear your own voice. This will not be easy, because you're not just stepping away from noise. You're stepping away from emotional addiction. You've used some of these patterns as anesthesia. You've used certain people as permission slips to stay small. You've used certain rooms as mirrors of who you used to be, because becoming more would mean leaving what's familiar. But in the fast, you reclaim your rhythm. You stop outsourcing your mood. You stop needing constant input. You stop depending on the external to define your internal. And in that void, you meet your real self again. The silent season, where wealth rewrites its invitation. There's a moment mid-fast when the world feels quieter, not silent, just less demanding. You wake up and don't rush for your phone. You move slower. You breathe deeper. You start noticing space in your thinking, space that used to be filled with noise. And in that space, an invitation is written, not by the algorithm, not by a podcast, but by your inner architect, the part of you that knows what you came here to build, the one that doesn't doubt or compare, the one who isn't afraid of success, visibility, or wealth, because they've met it in silence, not spectacle. This season is where the new code downloads, not as hype, but as harmony. Because when the static clears, wealth begins to whisper. How to fast with power, not performance. This is not about being extreme. It's about being intentional. Try this. 1 day a week. No social media. No input. No external noise 1 morning a week. No speaking. Only writing 1 hour a day. No devices. Just walk. Breathe. Observe 1 week in a month. No plans. Just silence and soul check-ins. One person to distance from, whose presence costs you peace. You're not withdrawing from life. You're realigning with life force. You're recalibrating to the rhythm of your future, not the tempo of your timeline feed. And over time, you begin to hear again, to decide again, to receive again. Because the channel is clear, and your frequency is no longer being jammed by external debris. The fast isn't forever, but its impact is you'll return. To the world, to the noise, to the rooms, but not the same. You'll come back differently tuned, sharper, stronger, more selective. What used to appeal will feel heavy. What used to entertain will now distract. What used to pass for normal will now feel unbearably small. This is good, because you didn't fast to escape. You fasted to reclaim. And now that your frequency has been recoded, you're ready to architect the world around you on purpose. That's where we go next. Let's build. Now we shift from fasting to forging, from subtracting what drains to designing what awakens. This is where you become not just a dreamer, but the architect of an environment that speaks wealth into your every breath. You've fasted from the noise. You've silenced the static. You've begun to remember your own frequency. Now comes the shift that most never make, consciously designing an environment that reinforces your future, not your past. This is what separates the permanently wealthy from the temporarily successful. Most people leave their environment to chance. They focus on mindset but ignore what surrounds the mind. They grind for results but breathe in scarcity from their space, sound, and symbols. Napoleon Hill wrote, "Environment consists not only of physical surroundings, but also of all influences which affect our thoughts and feelings." You must hear this. The subconscious cannot sustain what the environment contradicts. You may journal affirmations every morning, but if your room reflects disorder, doubt, distraction, you are sabotaging yourself without even knowing. Wealth is not just strategy. It is surrounding. It is symmetry between who you say you are and the atmosphere that mirrors it back. Let's build that atmosphere now. The environment is the echo of identity. First, understand this law. The outer world must become a mirror of your inner belief. Not a contradiction, not a compromise, a reflection. If your space looks like survival, it will echo scarcity. If your home is disorganized, wealth will feel unsafe. If your digital world is chaotic, your creativity will remain suppressed. But if you build with intention, if you shape your space with symbols, structure, silence, and sovereignty, you turn your environment into an altar for your highest identity. And altars attract alignment. Designing the wealth atmosphere, tangible upgrades, here's where it becomes real. 1. Visual alignment. Look around. Does your environment look like your next level? Clean desk. Minimal distractions. Symbols of wealth, books, objects, visuals that whisper power and precision. Mirrors placed with intention. Reminders to see yourself clearly. Clutter removed, not for aesthetic, but for energetic access. Your subconscious reads images faster than thoughts. Let every surface speak the future. 2. Sonic environment sound sculpts emotion. So ask, what are you hearing when you enter your workspace? Do your playlists elevate or sedate you? Do you allow silence to breathe between ideas? Use music tuned to 432 Hz or 528 Hz for frequency harmony. Use silence as a sacred threshold between activities. Let your morning be free of human voices and full of your own. Wealth enters clean channels. Noise clogs the flow. 3. Space and ritual. Every environment needs ritualized rhythm. Not just routine, but ritual. Meaningful, repeatable actions that signal the subconscious. We are sovereign here. Light a candle before you write. Touch your vision board each morning. Speak your new identity aloud before stepping into your creative zone. Walk the same path every morning, speaking silently to your future self. This isn't superstition. It's symbolic coding. The subconscious craves pattern. Give it one that speaks legacy, not limitation. Curating your circle is environmental design. Your environment isn't just physical, it's relational. Every person in your space is part of your atmosphere. They either reinforce your identity or rewrite it, subtly, constantly. So ask, who brings out the future in me? Who reminds me of who I no longer want to be? Who sees my greatness without needing to understand it? You are not too much. You are simply no longer in the room designed to hold you. Rebuild the room. Audit your conversations. Limit energy leaks. Cultivate high-frequency connection with builders, not consumers. This is not arrogance. This is environmental sovereignty. Your environment is a portal, not a prison. When your spaces align, it becomes a vortex. Ideas flow faster. Decisions are cleaner. Energy regenerates between tasks. You stop motivating yourself Because your environment does it for you. It speaks your name before you forget it. It holds your standard when you're tired. It reflects your new identity, even when the world doesn't see it yet. This is how wealth becomes inevitable. Because the world you live in is built to match the life you're becoming, not the one you're leaving behind. The architect's mind is never passive. Once you reclaim your authority as the designer of your environment, everything changes. No more default. No more just getting by. You become surgical with your space, selective with your inputs, sovereign with your access. And every part of your environment begins speaking one sentence back to you. Wealth lives here now. Not just in dollars, but in dignity, in focus, in peace, in precision. And once that sentence is spoken consistently, your bank account will rise to meet it. Because money follows atmosphere, and you just became the architect. Now there's one final step, to return to the room you once feared, and stand in it differently. Let's close. Now we return, not to where it all began, but to the place you once called home with different eyes. It's a homecoming to the self that no longer belongs in limitation. Go back. Step into the room you once feared. The one that raised you, shaped you, softened you, and almost broke you. But this time, don't flinch. Look around. Same furniture, same voices, same rhythm. But something's different now. You. The room hasn't changed much, but your nervous system no longer bows to its energy. Your voice no longer shrinks in its echo. Your vision no longer bends to be understood. Because you've been rewired, the silence you cultivated has become armor. The fasting you practice has become fire. The identity you sculpted has become sovereign. And that sovereignty cannot be revoked, not even by the past that built you. This is the power of environmental mastery. You didn't just leave the room. You reclaimed your rhythm outside of it. You rewrote your code. You unhooked from the loyalty that used to keep you broke. And now, you walk back in not to prove, but to witness. To feel what it's like to stand in the same place, but not carry the same posture. You're not here to convince anyone. You're not here to explain your elevation. You're here to own the echo of who you've become, quietly, powerfully. Because true wealth doesn't scream, it radiates. And when you radiate, environments shift. You don't leave the room, you become the room. This is the legacy phase. You no longer seek better environments. You become one for others, for your children, for the stranger who hears your tone and decides to rise, for the younger version of you who prayed someone like you would walk in one day and be proof. You no longer need recognition. You no longer require applause. You're not obsessed with vibes. You are the vibration. Every room you enter now gets upgraded because your presence is coded in silence, wealth, stillness, clarity. You've stopped seeking spaces to reflect your worth and started building spaces where worth is remembered. This is how legacies begin, not with noise, but with atmosphere. The final shift from environment bound to atmosphere bearing before, you were a product of your surroundings. Now, your surroundings are a reflection of your presence. That's not ego. That's energetic sovereignty. You don't apologize for having boundaries. You don't over-explain your peace. You don't re-enter toxic rhythms just because they once felt like home. Because you finally understand, I am the room now. And the room rises with me, or it is no longer mine to occupy. This doesn't mean you cut everyone off. It means you stop negotiating your frequency to be accepted. You don't lower your ceiling to match old walls. You don't return to the cage just because you decorated it well. You walk with quiet clarity, and those ready to rise will follow your frequency, not your footsteps. Your environment was never the final enemy. It was the first mirror. And now that you've stopped obeying its lies, you finally see yourself clearly, not through the eyes of fear, not through the lens of survival, but through the silence of someone who knows who they are, knows where they're going, knows what they will no longer tolerate. Because environments shape identity until identity shapes them back. And now, you're no longer shaped. You shape. You've carried the code all along. Now you have the key. Use it.